My phone lit up at 5:47 am on a Sunday in March. I looked at the screen. For one specific dumb moment between sleep and awake, the name didn't register. Then it did. The kitchen was dark. The green ceramic mug on the shelf above the stove, bought at a Sunday market 14 months ago, chipped on the rim, the exact color of my kitchen walls according to the woman who had found it and bought it and brought it over, caught the streetlight through the window in a way that was not dramatic and somehow still felt like it. I accepted the call. She said it before I could say hello, before I could say anything at all. She said it the way you say something you have been rehearsing for a long time and have finally made yourself deliver, like someone who ran out of road. "I think I made a mistake," she said. "Letting you go." That is where this story arrives. What I have never been able to explain cleanly is how we got there, which requires going back 17 months to a birthday dinner and a table argument about pineapple on pizza that lasted 45 minutes and involved 3 unsolicited opinions and at least 1 Wikipedia citation, and the specific way she looked at me when she was losing and knew it and wasn't going to concede anyway. I knew that night it was going to be some kind of problem. I had the wrong idea about what kind. My name is Nate Carver. I'm 34. I work as a project manager for a mid-sized residential construction company in Portland, the unsexy version of the building industry, which is the one involving permit delays and spreadsheets and calls with subcontractors who have legitimate grievances about decisions made 3 levels above them. I manage builds I didn't design and fix problems I didn't create, and I'm reasonably good at both. Callum Bennett and I have been friends since we were 19, since a philosophy class we took as a joke and both accidentally enjoyed. And for 15 years, he has been the kind of friend who shows up when things are bad, and also when there's no reason at all, which is the harder thing to be. Clara was 2 years younger than Callum and 4 years younger than me. I had known her peripherally for nearly a decade, at Christmas dinners, at a few birthday events, in the way you know someone who belongs to a person you love, but has their own full orbit that rarely crosses yours. She was a pediatric nurse. She argued like she cared about being right only slightly less than she cared about being correct, which are different things, and she was aware of the distinction. She had opinions about most things and held them loosely, except the ones she held with both hands, and it took me an embarrassing amount of time after we got together to understand which category I was in. We met properly at Callum's 32nd birthday dinner. Someone ordered a pizza with pineapple and made the error of defending it aloud. Clara disagreed. So did I. For the first 20 minutes, this was simply the wrong thing to have in common, and then somewhere past the 30-minute mark, it became the right one. By the time the table had moved to dessert, we were still at it. Callum told me afterward that he had found this both unsurprising and irritating in precisely equal measure. She brought the green mug over on our 3rd date, found it at a Sunday market, and bought it because it matched my kitchen walls, she said. That is either a normal thing to notice about someone's apartment, or the kind of thing you only notice when you have been paying a certain kind of attention. And I chose, at the time, not to examine which one. The chip in the rim appeared 6 weeks later, the morning after a fight about something that had seemed important and stopped seeming important approximately 4 seconds after the mug hit the tile. We laughed for longer than made sense. I kept the mug on the shelf after she ended things. I didn't move it, because moving it would have been a decision about what it meant, and I wasn't ready to make that decision. We were together 9 months. She ended it on a Wednesday night in January, in a coat she hadn't taken off, because she'd come only to return a book she'd borrowed, and then she'd said she needed to talk. She said she wasn't ready, that there was something she needed to figure out, something internal, something she couldn't put into cleaner language yet. She said she was sorry and looked like she meant it. I didn't push for specifics. I thought specifics might make it worse, and I was right about that, though wrong about what kind of worse I was protecting myself from. She left. I stood in the kitchen for a while. Then I went to bed. For the next 14 months, we were in the same rooms roughly every 6 weeks. Callum's family considers attendance at shared meals a structural requirement rather than a preference, and we managed it with the specific grace of two people who have practiced very carefully. We talked when proximity made it natural. We didn't manufacture proximity. We were, to anyone watching, two adults who knew each other through a mutual friend and got along fine. I told myself, on a fairly consistent schedule, that I was fine. I was fine the way a job site is fine at the end of a Friday. Everything closed. Nothing actively on fire. Problems deferred to Monday when they'll still be there, and you'll have to deal with them. The Sunday in March began without anything to indicate it would be different. Callum texted at noon. I'm dying. Not metaphorically. Flu. I cannot locate soup. He added a photo of his kitchen that contained 1 bag of rice, half an onion, and an expired protein powder with the cap missing. I picked up soup and 2 kinds of cold medicine and drove over, because Callum shows up for no reason, and this is what you do. Clara answered the door. I hadn't known she was there. I must have shown something when I saw her, because she made the specific face of someone choosing not to notice that you've shown something. She was in a gray sweater with the sleeves pushed up, her hair pulled back in the way it goes when she's been somewhere comfortable for a few hours, and stopped thinking about it. She looked at the bag in my hand. That's a lot of soup, she said. He sent a photo of his kitchen, I said. She nodded once, like this was a complete explanation, and stepped back to let me in. Callum was on the couch in the specific theatrical way of men with mild illnesses, who are alone and haven't eaten. He was grateful for the soup. Less grateful for the cold medicine I made him take, asleep within 20 minutes of finishing the bowl, which left Clara and me in the kitchen with the remains of a meal and nothing on the schedule. She put the kettle on without asking. I stacked the takeaway containers. She found 2 mugs in Callum's cabinet and made tea, setting one in front of me without asking if I wanted it, which I was beginning to understand was simply how she moved through any kitchen she'd been in for more than an hour. We sat at Callum's small table and talked about his building's ongoing dispute with a neighbor about the recycling procedures, which had apparently escalated to a formal note on the communal corkboard. We talked about the hospital and a patient she couldn't name, but clearly hadn't stopped thinking about. She described the family without describing them, in the careful language of someone who has learned to carry other people's difficult weeks without making them smaller. I asked one question and she answered it, and then looked briefly surprised that I'd asked the right one. I have poor survival instincts around women who are paying attention to more things than they let on. She mentioned a documentary she'd watched the night before, something about infrastructure, of all things, that had made her genuinely angry in a way she hadn't anticipated. I made the mistake of asking which part, and then we were 40 minutes into a conversation about city planning and who bears the cost of bad decisions, and I had completely stopped thinking about the drive home. She made a sharp point, and I pushed back, and she looked at me the way she'd looked at me during the pizza argument at Callum's birthday, like conceding was not on the table, but she was at least entertaining my position. Then I yielded on a specific point, and she looked briefly satisfied in a way I had always, for reasons I decided not to examine, found more compelling than winning an argument myself. She went quiet after that, looking at her mug. "Do you remember what the fight was about?" she asked. "The one where the mug got chipped?" I didn't hesitate. "The reservation," I said. "You thought I'd made it to the wrong restaurant on purpose. I thought you'd made it to the wrong restaurant." "On purpose," I said. She looked at me sidelong. Then she laughed, short, sudden, the one that surprised her. You had made it to the wrong restaurant. Not on purpose. No, she said. Not on purpose. She looked at Callum's mug in her hands, turning it once. I was so certain I was right about that. You weren't. I know. She was quiet for a moment. I know that now. The sentence had more weight in it than what it said. Neither of us pulled on the extra weight. In the other room, Callum shifted on the couch and went quiet again. Around 4, I said I should probably go. I put my jacket on and carried the bag to the door, and she walked me there, both of us aware of how short a walk this was. And I turned to say goodbye, and she was looking at me with an expression I couldn't classify, which had happened before with her, and it always turned out to mean something specific that I was only able to name afterward. The terminal light in Callum's hallway was the dimmer, yellower kind. The apartment was quiet. We were standing about 2 feet apart. I thought, if I were a different kind of person, this is the part where I'd say the thing. But I am not a different kind of person, and the thing lives in a room I decided to seal in January, and I had a long drive home. She looked at the door briefly, then back at me. "Thanks for coming," she said. "Of course," I said. Those were not the words either of us were having, but they were the ones we said. I left. I drove home. I went 12 blocks past my exit before I noticed. I told myself the afternoon was fine, normal. 2 people who had once been more than this, managing to be less. I did not examine what I had felt when she answered the door. I had spent 14 months not examining that particular category of information, and I had become skilled at it. This is not a recommended long-term strategy. It is, however, a very sustainable short-term one, and I had been in the short term for over a year. What I also didn't say to myself, because I had decided this room in my head was sealed, was that on the drive home I went 12 blocks past my exit before I noticed. I noticed it, recalibrated, and filed this under traffic. I am a professional filer. I also didn't tell myself about Callum's Christmas dinner in December, where she had put her coat on the chair beside her. Not the one across, not the end of the table. The one directly next to her. She hadn't looked at me when I arrived. She'd just moved the coat. When I sat down, she passed me the bread without being asked, and I passed her the salt. And for 2 hours we talked with the ease of people who know each other's rhythms so well the conversation requires almost no maintenance. And when I left, I told myself that was just how it was with people you'd once been close to. And that was the healthy version of things, and I believed this completely, while also going home and standing in my kitchen looking at the mug for a while before I went to bed. Or the text in October, a question about a load-bearing wall for her friend's renovation. It was a good pretext, a completely plausible one. She could have just texted Callum, who also knows people in construction, which suggests the question was partly a reason, and partly the point. I answered the question. We went back and forth 4 times. Then she said thanks, and I said any time, and that was all. I thought about it, off and on, for about a week. Or Callum mentioning in the fall, offhandedly, between 2 sentences about something else, that she'd asked how I was doing. He said it the way people report things they think are small. I nodded. I said something about how that was nice of her. I went home and thought about it, quietly and without resolution, for about 2 months. These things lived together in a room in my head that I had decided not to enter. I had been very disciplined about the door. The afternoon at Callum's had pushed it open by 1 inch, and I was working very hard not to look through it. At 5:47 in the morning, the door came off its hinges entirely. I accepted the call. I didn't say anything. Neither did she for a moment. Then she said, "I've been thinking about that mug." I looked at the shelf. The green ceramic one was catching the streetlight exactly the way it always did. "Which one?" I said. "You know which one." I did. "I keep thinking," she said, "about whether you got rid of it after. And I could have asked Callum. I almost did. Once. A pause. But if you had, I thought I'd rather not know." I looked at the mug. I didn't. She was quiet. "I think," she said, "that I made a mistake." Her voice was steady in the particular way of something rehearsed that is still frightening to say. "Letting you go." I went completely still. The kitchen was cold in the early morning way, and the streetlight was low and orange through the window, and something in my chest moved without asking my permission first. "Clara, I know," she said. "Quickly, you don't have to, no." I stopped. I put my hand flat on the counter. I was going to say, "You don't have to do this at 5:47 in the morning." She made a sound, somewhere between a laugh and the breath that comes just before one, when you weren't sure you were allowed. "I've been awake since 4, she said. "It's now or it's never, and I am very tired of never." I understood this. I had spent 14 months in Never's waiting room. "Tell me why," I said. "Why you ended it." A longer pause. "Because I thought you'd get tired of me," she said. The actual version. Not the version of me at the beginning of something, when I'm still choosing what to show. "I thought I'd rather end it myself than wait to find out you could leave." She stopped. That was the most foolish reason I have ever acted on, and it took me a year to understand it was fear and not instinct. Something in my chest snapped into place quietly. "I kept it," I said, "because getting rid of it meant deciding what losing you meant. And I was not ready to make that decision." I looked at the mug on the shelf. "I've been not ready for 14 months. She was quiet for a long moment, the careful kind. "Every girl I've been with has felt temporary," I said. Not unkindly, just like we were both waiting for the thing to run its course. "That never happened with you. Every time I thought I understood you, there was more. That's not something you get tired of." I stopped. That's the thing I would have said in January, if you'd asked. The silence stretched. Not uncomfortable, the other kind. "Can I come over?" she said. "It's 6 in the morning. I know what time it is." My phone buzzed. I ignored it. "Yes," I said. "Come over." My phone buzzed again. I glanced at it. A text from Callum. "Did you leave a scarf here?" There is definitely a scarf. I set the phone face down on the counter. The scarf could wait. She arrived in 20 minutes, still in the gray sweater, driving straight from Callum's, because she'd known going home first would give her enough time to talk herself out of it. Which I believed completely, because I knew how she thought, and she knew I knew. I had the coffee made. She stood in my kitchen and looked around the way you look at a place you haven't been in over a year, checking whether your memory was accurate. Her eyes found the shelf. She crossed the kitchen and picked up the green mug with both hands, the same way she always had, her thumb going to the chip in the rim immediately, not deliberately, just the way hands find things they know. She held it for a moment. "You really kept it," she said. "I really did." She looked at me. There was something in her face that I hadn't seen in 14 months. Not the careful version, not the one that had practiced being fine at Callum's dinners, but the one that had been on the phone at 6 in the morning and decided to say the true thing. She set the mug back in its place on the shelf. The coffee was ready. I poured 2 cups. She took hers and leaned against the counter across from me, and for a moment we just stood there in the kitchen, in the particular light of early March mornings, on the other side of something that had taken a year and a half to cross. "I rehearsed this," she said. 14 different versions. How many involved calling before sunrise? All of them, she said. That part wasn't negotiable. She looked at the mug. I was going to lead with something with more cover. Work up to it, a pause. Then I thought, I have been covering this for a year. What has that produced? That sentence did something quiet to the room. Nothing useful, I said. Nothing at all, she said. She looked at me. I looked at her. Outside, the street was still dark, but the specific dark of 6 in March. The kind that's already thinking about becoming something else. We had time. For the first time in over a year, we had actual time. 6 months later, Callum's exact reaction was, I knew in December. The seat. You're both impossibly slow. He said this at his own engagement party, loudly, in front of 10 people, with the satisfaction of a man who had been sitting on this observation for months and had finally been licensed to use it. Then he gave a speech about love being the most obvious thing in any room, except to the 2 people it concerns. And he looked directly at us for the part about the room. And Clara laughed and looked at me, and I looked at her, and that was the whole thing. All of it in one moment. A year on, she had a drawer and opinions about the cabinet organization that conflicted with mine, and that I found, without much difficulty, I did not mind. The green mug with the chip stayed in the center of the shelf. The others arranged themselves around it over time. The way things arranged themselves around whatever was there first and knows it. 2 years later, when people ask how we got here, Callum tells the story before we can. He gives them the pizza dinner version, which is mostly true, and includes the part where he saw it coming before either of us did, which is entirely true, and which he will tell you about specifically if you let him. We let him have it. The part that belongs to us is the mug and the shelf and a streetlight through a dark kitchen window, and a phone at 6 in the morning, and 5 words delivered before hello by someone who had carried them long enough to know what they weighed.